Hi, Patrick.
Yes, good morning.
Thanks for waiting. Over there in the great Ireland. You're in Ireland now. I'm assuming that's where the phone is. Okay.
I'm in Galway, in the west of Ireland.
All right. So, Patrick, you want to say a bit about how you came to Buteyko and what you're doing with it, and maybe mention something about your book and your website.
Sure. I came across Buteyko, it's about 10 years ago now. When I came across it at the time, I was a very severe asthmatic. I was in my early 20s. I had asthma for about 20 years. I had regular hospitalizations, lots of medication. And any time I thought about, well, if I'm like this when I'm in my early 20s, what will it be like when I'm in my 60s and 70s? And I came across it by chance. It was some journalist had covered an article here in Ireland, and then I contacted people in Australia. I used the method initially just for my own asthma. I never had thought about teaching anybody else to do it. It made a lot of sense to me. At the time, I had my mouth open continuously. I was snoring. I would have been taking regular sighs and constantly short of air, constantly feeling suffocated. And it's a very, very simple observation about Buteyko, and it's amazing that it's been pretty much completely overlooked, even though when you do go through the medical archives or medical papers, there is lots of references to the extent that chronic overbreathing or breathing a volume of air greater than what you require and how that's causing asthma symptoms. So in a nutshell, I used it for my own asthma. I made very, very good progress. And then 2 years later, I decided to learn to become a practitioner through the Buteyko Clinic of Moscow. I've now been teaching it about 7 years full-time here in Ireland. I've taught many thousands of people. I've written a number of books. And one of my books, Asthma Free Naturally, is just published now by Connery Press in the US. And that book was the best-selling book in the UK and Ireland for the past 3 years. So hopefully with Asthma Free Naturally that word is getting out, that I can't say anything more, about the Buteyko method. I think it's absolutely a lifeline for people with asthma. Asthmatics overbreathe, not just in response to their condition, but that their overbreathing is feeding back into the condition. And we can look at that in a very simplified terms. Physical exercise affects about 90% of asthmatics. And if you look at what happens to their breathing when they commence physical exercise, as they start to breathe heavier. And as they're breathing heavier, they're taking greater volumes of air into their airways, and their airways are constricting in response to that. And it usually happens within the first 3 to 5 minutes. Laughter, the American Thoracic Society, in 2005 they released a report, and they said that laughter affects 57% of asthmatics. And a Dr. Gare there said, we're not quite sure what's involved, but he said it might be due to hyperventilation. Well, I think any of your listeners will know that you'll know of a friend or a relative or maybe even themselves that when they get into fits of laughter, if they're watching a good comedy, like they're told a joke or something, they start to feel that their breathing gets difficult in response to it. And all that's happening there is during the few minutes of laughter is that they're taking greater volumes of air into their airways. Our airways constrict. If we have the genetic predisposition, say the asthma gene, if we call it that, and we breathe a volume of air greater than what's required, it's causing our asthma symptoms, coughing, wheezing, breathlessness. It's also causing fatigue, which is very common with people with asthma, because as we're over-breathing, whether it's due to the CO2 theory, absolutely has a lot of merit, but it can be debated. For every 1 millimeter drop of CO2, it reduces blood flow to the brain by 2%, meaning that the heavier we breathe, it's not just causing our airways to constrict, but it's also causing our blood vessels to constrict. Other people with asthma will be aware that when they're stressed, as we're stressed, we start to breathe heavy, we go into the fight or flight response. And many women who develop late onset asthma, they often find that they've never had asthma for maybe 40, 50 years, but they go through a big stress in their life, and next thing is they're feeling a shortness of breath, or they go to the doctor, and their doctor will diagnose them with asthma. So primarily what's happening there is stress is increasing over breathing, and this is causing their body to become used to breathing this larger volume of air. This in turn then is affecting their airways. Another factor would be talking. Talking would be anybody who's involved with teaching or sales, etc. especially if they cough, they'll often notice that they don't cough until they get onto the phone to somebody. And as you're talking, you start taking in more air. Now, those are all practical examples that we can relate to. And this is just to show you. Now, we're already over-breathing, but it's these examples, such as exercise, laughter, stress, and talking, that cause our breathing to increase more than what it normally is, and this is taking us into symptoms. Those are all practical examples. Swimming, on the other hand, has been advocated for years by medical doctors, even though the precise reason as to why it has to asthmatics, it's not really known. But let's look at it. We know what's the effect. When you're swimming, your face is in the water. When your face is in the water, you breathe less. You're moving your arms and legs, which due to increased metabolic activity is generating carbon dioxide. That's building up in your blood. That's helping to relax your airways. Now, unfortunately, the swimmer gets out of the pool oftentimes with their mouth open. So even though they've been swimming, reducing their breathing, helping their asthma, they're not aware of that link. So after about 2 hours, the benefits that have accrued to swimming will soon be lost. Quote here, noisy and deep breathing of an asthmatic had always been considered an outcome of the disease. Nobody could even suspect that deep breathing was the cause of bronchial asthma. An increased depth of breathing could provoke the appearance of the symptoms of the disease. And that's Konstantin Pavlovich Buteyko, a quote from himself. And it's a quote that any asthmatic can relate to. You know, we have to start asking ourselves the questions, well, what is overbreathing? A very easy way to understand what overbreathing is to compare it to overeating. And asthmatics in different trials have been found to breathe 2 to 3 times the volume of air. So if normal healthy breathing is about 4 to 6 litres of air per minute. In the different trials of asthmatics, one trial showed 14 litres, one trial showed 12 litres, one trial showed 15 litres. So this is in between attack. This is the normal minute ventilation, the normal amount of air that an asthmatic is taking into their lungs every minute.
Okay, I just want to add to that, if you take it down in terms of the number of breaths per hour, normal good breathing would be about 720 breaths per hour, whereas the asthmatic is breathing 1,680 times per hour. 1,680 times versus 720. And if you go to, for a week, it's 120,960 for breathing properly, and for the asthmatic, almost 300,000. They're doing an awful lot of work in the wrong direction.
Sure, and their lungs are.
Okay, folks, well, that was an interview that I had with myself and Patrick McKeown,